You know, we love to talk about community as if it's the solution for everything. Feeling lost? Find your people. Struggling? Lean on the village. Society falling apart? Clearly, we just need to get back to our roots. And listen, community can be a beautiful thing, I'm not saying. It offers support, belonging, a shared sense of purpose.
It's beautiful!
But what we don't talk about enough is its shadow side. The way it stifles as much as it nurtures. The way it enforces outdated traditions, assigns people roles they never asked for, and rejects anything that doesn't fit its mold. And The Lion King 2 is a masterclass in showing both sides. This isn't just a story about redemption or love. It's a story about how communities are built, how they fail, and what it takes to fix them. Simba leads through fear, believing control will keep his pride safe at the beginning. Kiara pushes against the rules but struggles to define herself beyond them. Kovu was raised to be a weapon, not a person/lion. And Zira, well, she's so consumed by vengeance that she would rather die than change, quite literally. So at the center of it all is one core truth. The same elements that make a strong community can just as easily turn it into a prison.
No, that's confusing.
So let's break it down. And stick around because by the end, we'll talk about why community keeps failing today and what it would take to actually build something that lasts. A utopia, if you will. Okay, Simba isn't just a leader, he's a traumatized leader. And that distinction matters because every decision he makes is shaped by fear. His father's death, his exile, Scar's betrayal, he isn't ruling the Pride lands, he's guarding them. His leadership isn't about guidance, it's about defense. He doesn't govern, he patrols. He doesn't teach, he warns. He doesn't shape the future, but he's trying to make sure the past never happens again. And nowhere is that clearer than in how he raises Kiara. She already knows his fears by heart. Stay close, follow the rules, you have a duty to the pride. And look, none of this is inherently bad parenting, okay? It's a good thing to teach responsibility. But responsibility without autonomy, that's not guidance. That's control, and it's frankly confusing. If you want someone to truly embrace the we are one philosophy, they first need to understand what I am even means first. And that's the step Simba skips entirely. We see the consequences when she goes on her first hunt. Kiara isn't just bad at hunting, she's completely unprepared. And that's terrifying because she's a lion, okay? Her survival literally depends on this skill. And yet she fails because Simba spent so much time shielding her from danger that he never taught her how to face it. And instead of realizing that maybe this whole overprotective parenting thing isn't working, he doubles down. He straight up lies to her, tells her she can hunt alone, then sends Timon and Pumbaa to spy on her. Which, Simba, my guy, what's the plan here? Because she's a lion. What, are Timon and Pumbaa going to meal prep for her for the rest of her life? It's almost as if this isn't leadership, it's sabotage, you know? And that's where Simba's leadership flaws become dangerous. A leader has to be rigid and flexible. They have to honor the past without getting stuck in it. But Simba seems so focused on keeping things the same that he's blind to the future. And it's not just a Kiara problem, it's the same reason he exiles the Outlanders. Scar's followers remind him too much of everything he lost, and instead of trying to integrate them, he casts them out completely. To him, it's justice. To Zira, it's persecution, I'm sure. And that's the danger of ruling through fear. When you make every decision based on what you're trying to prevent, you don't see the consequences of what you're actually creating. Simba assumes keeping them out will keep his pride safe, but all he's really doing is breeding resentment. The real test of a leader isn't how well they enforce control, it's how well they adapt to change. And when Kiara finally challenges him, when she calls him out, tells him he'll never be Mufasa, it shatters him because she's right. He spent his life walking in his father's shadow, forgetting to become his own leader. His turning point isn't about fighting harder, it's about finally listening. And that's why he wins, because true leadership isn't about maintaining power, it's about evolving it. Now, Kiara is a nightmare for a fear-driven parent like Simba. She's fearless, defiant, she's curious, and the irony is that fearlessness isn't a flaw, it's proof that she feels safe enough to explore and be that way. And that's what makes her upbringing so contradictory in a way. Simba has drilled fear into her since she was little. Again, stay close, follow the rules, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, she isn't actually afraid, it seems. She pushes limits because she knows she won't be abandoned for making mistakes. And that tells us something crucial. Deep down, Kiara trusts the safety net is there. And yet, for all of her confidence, her world isn't really hers. She's constantly under surveillance. Timon and Pumbaa invalidate her curiosity at every turn. Even when she's exploring, she's never truly alone. It's like being given a map with only one path. Sure, you're walking, but you're not choosing where to go. And she senses that early. She rejects the title of princess as a cub, not because she doesn't want to be queen necessarily, but because she doesn't fully know who she is yet. It's not that she hates her role, it's that she knows it only represents half of her, but the other half, she has no idea who it is. Completely undefined. Then she meets Kovu. From their first interaction, something clicks. He challenges her. When he asks, "You always do what daddy says," she immediately snaps with no, but then falls silent because maybe for the first time she's realizing that's exactly what she does. And this isn't just a throwaway moment, it's the beginning of a pattern. Kiara is constantly asked things, only to be cut off before she can answer them. Simba asks what she was thinking but never actually listens. Timon and Pumbaa do the same thing. She's expected to accept rules, not understand them. And here's where this gets psychologically huge. Kids who aren't listened to don't stop having thoughts. I know, shocking. They just stop expressing them. And that's exactly what Kiara struggles with. She wants to embrace her role, but she doesn't know if it's truly hers or if it was just given to her. And then comes the hunt scene. This is supposed to be her first real test of independence, and Simba sabotages the crap out of it, right? And when she fails, because obviously she was never actually given the space to learn, he doubles down. This moment is where Kiara loses patience with her father's leadership, because this isn't about keeping her safe anymore, it's controlling her future. Simba is treating risk as something to be eliminated, not managed, but risk is life, risk is leadership. And the worst part is that Simba should know that. This is where Kovu's presence in her life becomes crucial. Kiara has never been allowed true autonomy. Kovu has never been allowed true softness. Kiara has always been surrounded by love but no freedom. Kovu has always been surrounded by freedom but no love. I mean, freedom, more or less, right? Let's not get into that quite yet. They are exact opposites, and that's exactly why they are drawn to each other. Kovu is everything Kiara was never allowed to be. Skilled, trained, independent. And through him, she finally sees her own world in a new light. And that's when she starts truly questioning who she is, not just as a princess, not just as Simba's daughter, but as Kiara. And the moment that solidifies it all is seeing her reflection. When Kovu is exiled, Kiara sees herself in the water, but it's only half of her face. It's a visual representation of what she's been feeling all along. Incomplete. And that missing half isn't just about Kovu, it's about her choice. Because here's what's so powerful. Kovu suggests that they run away together, start their own pride, leave it all behind. And she could. She could take the easy way out, absolutely. Live freely, love freely, avoid the fight. Yeah, why not? But she doesn't. Because Kiara knows that true leadership isn't just about personal freedom. It seems she has learned this lesson throughout the movie. It's about fixing what's broken. And this is where she surpasses her father. Simba has spent his whole life preaching unity, but Kiara is the one who actually makes it real, that embodies it. She doesn't run away. She doesn't abandon her people when things get hard. She doesn't separate from the outlanders. She does the one thing Simba was never brave enough to do. She chooses peace and actual unity. And she proves she's the true leader in the smartest way possible. She marries one of them. I mean, gets together with one of them. I don't know. Diplomacy at its finest. And she doesn't stop there. She doesn't just change her own fate. She stops her father from repeating his own mistakes, and she does it using his own words. We are one. That's when it finally hits Simba. Kiara isn't just repeating his lesson. She understands it in a way he never did. And in doing so, she doesn't just become Simba's daughter. She becomes Mufasa's granddaughter. And honestly, I mean, that's the kind of family tree you want to be part of. I'm not gonna lie. Ah, the outsider. So, Kovu was never supposed to be a person. He was supposed to be a weapon all along. From the second he was born, his future was decided for him. He would grow strong, he would train relentlessly, and one day he would kill Simba and take his place as the king. Zira didn't just want revenge, she wanted Scar's second coming. As a child, Kovu already repeats Zira's words without questioning them. Scar's wisdom, Scar's rule, Scar's kingdom. But there's a crack in the foundation. situation, you see, because when Kiara falls into the river as a child, Kovu doesn't let her die. He helps her escape, and that moment, that split second where his instincts override his conditioning, changes everything. Zira wants to punish him at first. She tells him that he failed in a way, but then she immediately changes her mind when she realizes that this could be an opportunity. So then she decides that Kovu's ability to connect with Kiara is something she can use. I need you to pay attention here, because his only moment of childhood, of real innocence, gets twisted into a mission. And that's the moment Kovu stops being a child. By the time he's grown, the transformation is complete. He's strong, ruthless, obedient, but obedience is not the same as belief, you see. Conditioning only holds as long as nothing challenges it, and for Kovu, that challenge begins the moment he enters the Pride Lands. Kovu has only ever known survival. He's never been allowed to relax, to let his guard down. But suddenly there's no war, no hunger, no constant battles for dominance in this pride. And then there's Kiara. Kiara is everything Kovu was never allowed to be. She's untrained, impulsive, free-spirited. But the irony is that that's exactly why he feels safe around her. She's terrible at sneaking. She's reckless. She doesn't have a strategy for half the things she does. She doesn't have an agenda, for God's sake. For the first time, Kovu doesn't have to be on high alert because she isn't. I mean, he literally tells her to get her claws out, for God's sakes. And the first break in his conditioning happens without him even realizing it. He starts to enjoy himself. That's the first step to breaking control. The mind needs a new, safe space where it can feel something different, something outside of fear, outside of the rigid role it was given. And Kovu, for the first time, experiences that. That's step one of breaking conditioning. Now, Zira raised Kovu to believe that Simba was an enemy, that killing him would be justice, that this wasn't just a personal mission, it was destiny. But the second Kovu integrates into Simba's pride, the logic starts to kind of fall apart, because nothing about this place feels like an enemy camp. These lions aren't tyrants, they aren't cruel. Simba isn't Scar, he's not even close. And Kovu, raised to believe that taking down Simba was righteous, starts hesitating. He was trained to be a killer, but there's nothing here to kill. He happens to have the perfect opportunity to attack. I mean, this is the moment Zira prepared him for. This is his purpose, and yet he doesn't do it. Not just out of morality, but because it's about identity. Because Kovu isn't just failing the mission, he's realizing he doesn't want it. That's step two in breaking conditioning, questioning the role you were given. Once someone starts seeing the cracks in their belief system, the entire thing starts falling apart. And for Kovu, well, it's already happening. Then comes step three, reframing the narrative. So Kovu tries to tell Kiara the truth. He wants to come clean, but fear holds him back. Fear of rejection, fear of being too far gone. And that's why what happens next is so important, because Simba unknowingly gives Kovu the final piece of the puzzle. He tells Kovu about Scar not as a simple villain, not as a straightforward story of good versus evil, but as something more complex. Fire is a killer, Simba says, and then he wipes away the ashes and reveals new growth underneath. Scar was destruction, but destruction isn't the end. It's what comes next that matters. What comes next can be different, better. That moment reframes Kovu's entire identity, because Scar was a killer, but Kovu doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to follow in Scar's paw prints. He can be the new growth that comes after destruction. And just as he's about to step into the new identity, Zira makes her move and essentially undoes much of the work here. She ambushes Simba, and Simba, leading from fear not wisdom, exiles Kovu. And just like that, everything he feared becomes real. He trusted, he was vulnerable, he was punished for it. Simba's actions don't prove that Kovu is different from Scar. They kind of push him closer to Scar's fate. So in a way, Simba has the opportunity to not repeat the same mistake of the past, yet he doesn't take it. After the exile, we see that Kovu doesn't return to Zira. He doesn't go back to the mission, doesn't reclaim the role she built for him, because it doesn't fit anymore. He's lost, but he's not the same lion he was before. The conditioning is already broken. And in the final battle, he makes the only choice that's truly his. He no longer belongs to her. This is the final step to breaking conditioning, choosing yourself, not the mission. Not just changing behavior, not just questioning your past, but fully stepping into an identity that you choose and embodying it through your behavior. That's why Kovu's arc is so powerful, because he wasn't born Scar's heir. He wasn't born a villain. He was a child giving one narrative, and he was strong enough to rewrite it. Okay, Okay, now Zira is a textbook example of how not to be a leader. I'm sure this comes with no surprise to anyone, but
it had to be said.
While Simba has his faults and is far from perfect, Zira is purely destructive. And since we know that evil isn't born, it's made, the best way to understand Zira's antagonism is through the lens of psychological wounds. Her hatred isn't just about Scar's death, it's about being robbed of power, of status, of privilege, of the life she believes she deserved. She sees Simba as a usurper rather than the rightful heir, but why? What makes her so loyal to Scar? Kovu is not even his son. So this is where we talk about what I'll call the shadow of the leader, the tyrant, in Jungian archetypes at least. In Zira's eyes, Scar was the rightful ruler because in her version of events, Simba abandoned his kingdom after his father's death. He abandoned his duties, his people, and Scar stepped in to take responsibility. To her, Scar is a hero, a leader who saved the pride from instability. And why does she think that way? Because she benefited from his leadership. Zira rules the Outlanders the way Scar ruled the Pride Lands, with fear, favoritism, and control. In the end, Scar took a prosperous land and ran it into the ground, replacing justice and harmony with oppression and survivalism. And Zira, well, she was privileged under that system. She was preferred. Her son was preferred. When Scar fell, her entire position in the hierarchy was shattered. And that's why when Simba exiled them, Zira doesn't see it as justice. She sees it as persecution. She's also emotionally invested in Scar's legacy because Scar chose Kovu to be king. That wasn't just political, it was personal. Simba rejecting Kovu wasn't just about leadership, it was in Zira's mind a betrayal of Scar's will. But here's the flaw in that logic. Scar was the reason the Pride Lands collapsed to begin with. And this is something we see in tyrants all the time. They omit crucial details when justifying their cause. You can tell the story of Scar as the brave leader who stepped in after tragedy to restore order. Or you can tell the story of Scar as the manipulative tyrant who murdered his own brother and tricked his nephew into exile. And when it comes to true leadership, all perspectives must be acknowledged. A real leader allows open dialogue. A tyrant absolutely the fuck doesn't. They create a narrative and enforce it as a fact. And that's exactly what Zira does. She doesn't run a community, she runs a cult. We see just how ruthless and strategic she is when she tests Simba. When Kovu and Kiara escape the crocodiles as cubs, Kovu technically breaks the rules by setting foot in the Pride Lands. And Zira has the absolute nerve to use him to see how Simba will react, because she hands over her own child as a test. Madam, I'll need you to take several seats right the fuck now, okay? Like, whoa. I'm sorry, but what if Simba had decided to harm Kovu? Would she have actually sacrificed him just to confirm a theory? Would she use her own cub to start a war? This alone shows just how manipulative she is. She has no real regard for Kovu's well-being outside of how he serves her long-term strategy. And that's her fucking son, remember? Oh, Jesus Christ, it just shivers. And that is the hallmark of a tyrant, right? Unlike Simba, who governs by the circle of life, Zira operates by the cycle of vengeance. And that's the real divide between them. The circle of life is about balance, unity, and renewal. The cycle of vengeance is about perpetuating conflict, pain, and destruction. And what kind of people does vengeance create? Erratic, violent, and unstable people. We see this in Zira's first interaction with Kovu as a cub. She's furious with him on a moment, brainwashing him with hatred, then suddenly sees an opportunity and becomes gleeful and proud. She goes from terrifying dictator to nurturing mother in the span of 2 minutes. The woman is unstable. We need CPS in here stat. Her lullaby to Kovu, which is literally giving nightmare fuel, shows us how she uses Kovu's future as king to soothe her own trauma. He's not just a son, he's her redemption, but that's quite the problem, eh? This is where Zira's philosophy completely fails. When dealing with past wounds, obsessing over revenge doesn't heal you, my guy. It consumes you. Her refusal to let go of the past costs her everything, and it's all because she wouldn't just find a new damn territory and start fresh. Zira, baby, have you tried meditating or, I don't know, like therapy? Even though I wouldn't want to work with her, she might fucking eat me. Zira is given multiple chances to let go, to the point that in a moment of rare vulnerability, Kiara even offers her a way out. She could have chosen to live, but she can't let go of Scar. Her attitude is almost cult-like at this point. Her entire identity is built around Scar's revenge. It's her reason for existing. Even when everything and everyone tells her to stop, up. She chooses death over peace. She seems to be completely oblivious to the fact that she's fighting for nothing, just to prove a point that no one else cares about anymore. I mean, let's talk about the sheer delusion here. Kovu, her chosen heir, abandons her. Nuka, desperate for her approval, dies proving himself. Vitani, her most loyal child, switches sides at the end. Her pride sees through her madness and walks away. Zira, babe, at what point do you just, take the L and move the fuck away? She has lost everything and yet she refuses to see the truth. The entire war is already over, but she's so caught up in her ideology that she literally chooses to die rather than change. Honestly, I kind of admire the commitment, not gonna lie. Just, not for murderous reasons. Zira's downfall isn't just about losing a battle, it's about losing the people who once followed her. A leader who only fights for themselves will never be able to sustain a real community, because at some point the people will see through the lies. Zira isn't fighting for her pride, she isn't even fighting for Scar's memory. She's fighting for herself, for her own inability to let go, and in the end, she dies completely alone. If that's not a cautionary tale of what not to do as a leader, I really don't know what it is. I mean, 0 out of 10 leadership would not recommend.